Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tipped. Julian here for a very exciting video. One of the most important videos of this preseason. This is my top 50 defenseman rankings. Now, first and foremost, guys, you're probably not going to agree with every single pick on this list. That's okay. If you agreed with every single pick on this list, there'd be no reason for you guys to be watching this videos. There's a lot of discrepancy in fantasy, and there's a lot of different types of leagues, and everybody has a different list. That's why it's good to watch somebody else's list, and maybe it'll give you an idea and highlight a guy that maybe you hadn't thought of, or maybe it'll make you a little bit lower on a guy that you were a little bit higher on. Before we jump into today's video, guys, though, drop a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. More than 50% of you guys that watch my channel aren't subscribed. So if you have been enjoying my videos, I really would appreciate if you hit that subscribe button, guys. And if you do want to take that support to the next level, I'm actually offering a Fantasy Tipped Members League. So if you join my Patreon, you actually get to play against myself and Max in an actual fantasy hockey league. See if you can beat me. Last year, I finished third place in a very tight semifinal. I ended up losing, but then ended up winning the third place matchup. I'm curious to see if anyone's able to beat me this year. Additionally, if you do decide to join my Patreon, I'm going to be releasing my full rankings of all NHL players very, very, very soon. So be sure to join that Patreon if you do want those full rankings. You also get to DM with me, ask me questions, and you get early access videos. So there's never been a better time to join my Patreon than now. Let's jump right into the rankings now, guys. And at number one, there is no surprise here at all. It's Cale Makar of the Colorado Avalanche with 92 points in 80 games last year, 30 goals as a defenseman. There should be no doubt in anybody's mind that Makar is the number one defenseman in fantasy. He may not hit 92 points again this year, but he's pretty much a lock for 80 plus. Zach Werenski is my number two defenseman, with Quinn Hughes being my number three. And I know a lot of people are going to have a problem with this, but if you look at their stats last year, Zach Werenski shot the puck over 100 times more than Quinn Hughes last year and had double the amount of blocks. Now, I understand that Quinn Hughes played 13 less games than Werenski, but those are pretty significant, and peripherals are important, and Quinn Hughes, even though his are not horrible, they're definitely not as good as Werenski's, and that's why I have Werenski at number two and Hughes at number three. At number four, I have Rasmus Dahlin of the Buffalo Sabres. He's by far their best player at the moment. 68 points in 73 games, just about a point per game for a defenseman on Buffalo. That's really, really impressive. I like Dahlin a lot. Bouchard is somebody who I have at number five, and I see him having a very similar season to last year, 67 points in 82 games, but obviously he could do a lot better if the Stars in Edmonton have a really, really good year this year. At number six, I have Moritz Seider, and he's so valuable in fantasy because not only does he put up a decent amount of points, he actually puts up some really good peripherals and particularly is good with blocks. So if blocks count for something in your league, that's going to be a nice floor for Moritz Seider. Roman Josi, I think he's going to have himself a nice bounce back season this year. He's at number seven, but I could see him finishing as a top five fantasy defenseman as he usually does. If Nashville does bounce back, you can bet that he probably will be a top five defenseman. At number eight, I have Mackenzie Weegar, and he'd be a top five defenseman if he wasn't probably losing power play one this year to Zane Parekh. 47 points in 81 games. I'm expecting that to go down a little bit this year, but the peripherals for Weegar are just so good. I still have him as a top 10 defenseman. At number nine, Victor Hedman. His ADP is really high right now at 38. 66 points in 79 games, and Tampa was being weird last year, not playing him on the top power play at times and putting Radish there instead. It's a bit strange. I'm expecting him to play power play one for the most part this season, but yeah, drafting him at ADP 38 is kind of crazy high. Josh Morrissey, 62 points in 80 games, got him at number 10. His ADP is a bit high too, but you really can't go wrong with Josh Morrissey. He's a pretty safe guy to have on your fantasy team. Jake Sanderson is the next guy I have on my list, going at an ADP of 71 and 57 points last year. He's a young dude, only getting better every single year. He might get over 60 points this year. Adam Fox I have at number 12, and I think the Rangers do bounce back a little bit this year. They really sucked last year, and I think Fox ends up finishing as a top 15 fantasy defenseman at the very least. He had 61 points last year. He could definitely do even better than that this year. Thomas Harley is a guy who I absolutely am in love with this year. I'm expecting Dallas to give him full control of the top power play unit. His peripherals aren't bad either. His plus minus was phenomenal last year. He should be able to do that again on a great Dallas Stars team. I just think Thomas Harley is a young kid with so much talent. Looks so good on Team Canada's roster last year. And I think he is going to end up finishing as a top 15 defenseman in fantasy this year if he can stay healthy. Mikhail Sergachev is my number 14 defenseman, and he is quarterbacking Utah's top power play. Had 53 points last year and should do something pretty similar this year with some decent peripherals. At number 15, this is one of my hotter takes, I guess. He had 36 points in 64 games last year. Now, I do expect the point total to go down relative to the amount of games that he plays, but if Parayko can play a full season, he's someone who's going really late in drafts, considering where I have him ranked on my list. So if you can actually get him close to an ADP of 127, that's a huge steal for Colton Parayko. Now, why is he so valuable? Well, his peripherals are just really, really good. He shoots, hits, and particularly blocks a lot of shots. So if you get some points in your league, or you're in a categories league, whatever it is, for those categories, Parayko actually has a lot of value, more than people think he does. Lane Hutson is who I have at number 16. And he's being drafted a lot higher than where I have him. The problem with Lane Hutson is his lack of peripherals. If you are in a points-only league, meaning that nothing counts except for points, Lane Hutson is a top 5 defenseman, I have no doubt in my mind. But being in a league that counts hits and blocks and shots as well, Lane Hutson doesn't really do a lot of any of those things. He blocks maybe once a game and doesn't shoot a lot, really doesn't hit a lot, especially being as small as he is. So you can't really expect much peripherals from him. That's why I have him down at number 16, but I am expecting a monster season from him offensively, and I do really, really love me some Lane Hutson. At number 17, I have Jakob Chychrun, who had an interesting role last year playing on the top power play with John Carlson as well, but he wasn't playing at the point. So that was very, very interesting, but he did do pretty good last year with 47 points in 74 games and should get a good amount of power play points. And he had some good peripherals. He should have a good year, but an ADP of 64 is way too rich for me, in my opinion, simply because, well, I don't expect Washington to do even remotely as good this year. They were really rallying behind Ovechkin and his goal record, and they don't really have that to rally behind this year. I don't think their team is good enough to do what they did last year. They finished first place last year. I don't think they're going to do quite as well. They could finish in a playoff spot still, obviously, but I'm just not expecting the amazing season they had last year, so I don't think Chychrun is going to be that valuable. I'd be willing to bet a lot of money on that. Seth Jones is the next guy I have on this list. Did pretty good last year. 36 points in 63 games is not crazy, but he did spend a lot of last year with Chicago. Now he is on Florida and is pretty much guaranteed to quarterback the top power play, where he should do pretty good, put up some points and some decent peripherals. Noah Dobson is the next guy I have on this list. And last year he had a little bit of a down year, considering that he did have access to the top power play for at least a portion of the year. Only 39 points in 71 games, and I'm actually expecting something similar in Montreal. Because in Montreal, it's Lane Hutson who's going to be manning the top power play, not Noah Dobson. Now, Montreal's second power play is actually going to be pretty good this year with the talent that they've added, but he's obviously not going to get the same amount of power play time that he did maybe a couple years ago when he had a career high in points. I'm still expecting a similar amount of points to last year and some pretty good peripherals, which is why he's a top 20 defenseman on this list. Thomas Chabot's the next guy on this list, and he's being criminally underrated in drafts with 45 points in 80 games last year, and that's pretty much getting zero top power play time in Ottawa. Some very good peripherals for Chabot as well. He's definitely not an exciting pick, but at 138, he's a pretty safe, reliable pick that should get you again about 45 points this year. Neil Pionk's another safe pick who hits a lot, puts up some decent peripherals, should get you about 35 to 40 points at the very least. If he plays a full season, could get even more than that, but Pionk is a safe floor guy, and if you have hits in your league, you really can't go wrong with him. Brandon Montour, someone who's being overdrafted at 88. Seattle's just a garbage team, and they run 2 power play units. He only had 41 points last year. His peripherals aren't that great that he should be going that early, so I avoid him that early in drafts. Darnell Nurse, A lot can say that I have him early on this list, but he consistently over the years has put up some really, really good peripherals and always gets 30 to 40 points. Now this year, there is a chance that he gets bumped down to the third pair D just because the Edmonton Oilers defensemen are quite a bit better this year. If he does, I'm not quite as high on him, but still, I still think he's going to put up some relatively decent peripherals. And with an ADP of 187, close to the very, very end of drafts, it's pretty hard to go wrong with a super safe floor guy like Darnell Nurse. He's definitely not an exciting draft pick by any means because safe floor guys never really are because they don't have much of a ceiling, but he is an option to get you that safe floor. Charlie McAvoy is someone who really didn't get much top power play looks last year in Boston. Still did okay though, which is why I have him at number 24. Dougie Hamilton, I have him all the way down at number 25 just because he's so injury prone. I can't remember the last time he played a full season, so I really docked him quite a few spots for that. So I wouldn't be drafting him at 85. Plus you got Luke Hughes looming there, and maybe he can take over the top power play in New Jersey, who knows. At number 26, I have John Carlson, who's going to be playing power play 1 in Washington in all likelihood. Jackson Lacombe, probably the top power play guy in Anaheim to start the year, but if Zellweger looks really, really good, it could be him that ends up taking it over. It's definitely Lacombe's job to lose to start off, though. Shea Theodore, I have him way lower than his current ADP just because he's another guy that can never stay healthy. If you actually draft Shea Theodore at 69, I pray for your soul, man. Like, you really, really have to hope and pray that the guy actually stays healthy a full season, which like literally never happens. So you just hope and pray if you're drafting him that early. I personally would avoid him. Alexander Romanov is someone who actually doesn't even have an ADP right now on Yahoo. 20 points in 64 games, but where he has value is the peripherals. He's a guy like Colton Parayko that puts up really good peripherals. Last year, he's really showed it. The Islanders were a really crappy team, and Romanov put up some good blocks numbers, some decent hits numbers, and some decent shot and goal numbers as well, which gives him that safe floor. Definitely not an exciting pick, but a pretty safe one. Shane Gostisbehere is a top power play guy in Carolina. I don't see that changing unless he really starts sucking, but 45 points in 70 games is pretty good, so I can see him staying on that top unit. Erik Karlsson could have a bounce back year this year in Pittsburgh. He should be manning the top power play unit there, and a unit with Sidney Crosby can't be that bad, right? Vince Dunn of the Seattle Kraken, 39 points. He's kind of like Montour. He plays on one of the two power play units. They kind of run them both equally, so he's not awful by any means. His peripherals are okay. He's not a super exciting pick, but he's not an awful pick. Radko Gudas doesn't have an ADP, and he's got a super safe floor with hits and blocks, and if your pool values those things, that's a pretty, really, really good pick towards the very end of your draft. Jake Wallman is another guy who puts up a very safe floor in Edmonton. Now, 40 points in 65 games is not something you're going to see replicated this year. Last year, he got a lot of points because he was on San Jose top power play unit before getting traded. So I'm not expecting quite as many points, but he definitely should still have a half-decent season in Edmonton, getting lots of ice time. Drew Doughty is an interesting one this year because LA, towards the end of the year last year, was running 5 forwards on their power play. So if Drew Doughty doesn't get PP1, his value goes down significantly. So he is definitely a scarier pick, but if he does end up back on power play 1 like he has been for so many years, he definitely probably even has more value than where I have ranked him. At number 36, Chris Letang is probably the PP2 guy in Pittsburgh. Still puts up some decent peripherals, should put up at least 30 to 40 points. He's definitely aging, though. You can't expect too much from the guy, but he is going really late in drafts, so not the end of the world if you draft him super late. Matthias Ekholm is another safe floor guy in Edmonton. You can expect 30 to 40 points from him as well, and some decent peripherals. Morgan Rielly is an interesting one because Marner being traded to Vegas kind of puts Morgan Rielly maybe back on power play 1. If you see in the preseason and in practice that Morgan Rielly is not going back onto power play 1 and they're still running with 5 forwards, avoid him at all costs in drafts because he's going to be horrible. But if he is back on power play 1, he could even end up ranking higher than this. Every second season, Rielly seems to have a pretty good season. Last year was an off year. Wasn't really his fault since he wasn't on power play 1 for most of the year. But this year could be a bounce back year for him if he does get the proper deployment. Devon Taves is a good supporting piece in Colorado, usually gets PP2 over there, puts up some decent peripherals. I have him at 39. Zeke Buem of the Minnesota Wild is a rookie over there, should be manning their top power play, and the dude's got a lot of skill. And ADP 131, it's a little bit risky, but I mean, he's going to be on a power play with the likes of Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson Ek, Boldy should be a pretty good top power play, and Buim could actually have a really good rookie season. At number 41, Zane Parekh. I don't know why he's being drafted above Buim right now. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. He probably gets power play 1 in Calgary, although that's not a guarantee as much as Buim is guaranteed to be on top power play in Minnesota. I do think the Flames do give it to him, even if it's not right away, and he should have another good rookie season. Caden Gooley of the Montreal Canadiens doesn't have an ADP, which is really, really surprising considering how good his peripherals are, and if he can stay healthy the whole year, he's a really good guy to have for a very safe floor, especially with blocks. Sam Renzel of the Chicago Blackhawks should be immediately on their top power play. The only reason he's so low on the list is because the Blackhawks are an awful team, but that top power play may not be that bad for the likes of Donato and Bedard on it, and Bedard could have a breakout year this year. Tony DeAngelo should be the top power play guy in New York unless Schaefer makes a team, which I don't think he will. So DeAngelo should, at least to start the year, operate as the top power play defenseman over there, and that's pretty much the only thing he's good at in hockey. Gustav Forsling of the Florida Panthers, 31 points last year in 80 games. He's pretty decent with peripherals too. He's really not an exciting pick at all, but he does probably end up finishing as a top 50 defenseman. At number 46, Alexander Nikishin. He is a rookie as well, but in the KHL just put up some really, really good numbers, both offensively and peripherally. Put up some good blocks numbers and some good hits numbers, finishing the 12th and 13th best in the entire KHL in those. So if he can put up some good peripherals, even if he doesn't get power play 1, he could still end up finishing as a top 50 defenseman. At number 47, I have Miro Heiskanen. And please, guys, do not draft Miro Heiskanen this year. He's going at ADP of 89. He's not going to see top power play time. No, I'm not crazy, guys. Miro Heiskanen is an amazing defenseman. He's one of the best in the entire NHL. But fantasy-wise, if he's not getting top power play time, he's not going to be that valuable. His peripherals aren't really that great. He's a tremendous real-life defenseman, but this year should be avoided in fantasy. At number 48, I have Noah Hanifin, and he actually projects a little bit lower than this, like in the 50s, but I do think he could have himself a sneaky good year with Pietrangelo missing the whole season. So if anything were to happen to Shea Theodore, which happens often, Noah Hanifin would have control of the top power play and could have some serious value. Could be a guy to handcuff if you have Shea Theodore. Again, not suggesting you draft Shea Theodore, but if you do, Noah Hanifin is probably a good guy to handcuff with him. Leanne Bichelle of the Dallas Stars is a guy who should give you a pretty safe floor if you have hits in your league. If you don't have hits in your league, just completely ignore Bichelle. He's going to be completely useless. But last year, he did hit over 4 times a game. And if he can continue that, he's definitely got some fantasy value. At number 50, it's Rasmus Andersson of the Calgary Flames. He's probably not going to be a Calgary Flame the whole season, but the Flames are more than happy starting the year with him on their roster. It's going to be interesting to see how his value fluctuates based on where he's traded. Right now, I have him at number 50. He could end up being more valuable or less valuable depending where he ends up being traded, but I'm not expecting him to get top power play time this year in Calgary. And that is my top 50 list, but I did include a number 51 here with Jacob Trouba, just because if you do have blocks in your league and you have like Yahoo standard rule or something like that, where blocks are actually worth a lot, Jacob Trouba probably ranks above most of these guys on this page, just because Trouba last year was the NHL leader in blocks, and that's pretty much all he did good last year. His hits were down, his shots were down, and his points were really, really down. But if blocks count for quite a bit in your league, Jacob Trouba is definitely a good honor. Other guys who just missed the list include Ekblad, Luke Hughes, Justin Falk, and Philip Hronek. There are other guys who are close as well, like Jacob Middleton and Jared Spurgeon, but this is my top 50 list. So what did you guys think of my list? Let me know down in the comments. What did you like? What don't you agree with? I'm curious to hear all of your thoughts. Drop a like on this video, guys. And if you haven't, hit that subscribe button, and I will catch you all in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.